Hey guys, Mr. Bowman here. Today's learning objective is in orange and we are learning to add and subtract integers. The first thing that we need to know is we are trying to add them. What exactly are integers? And integers are basically whole numbers. And what's going to be really relevant to our discussions today is they can be positive or negative. So we're trying to deal with how do we add and subtract positive and negative numbers. So our starting point is this number line that I've copied and pasted into the screen, and we're going to use this to help us with our maths. So our starting point is going to be addition. And we've got that written up there, addition. So the first question I want us to look at is, if you have positive 2 and you're adding positive 3 to that, where do you finish? So let's have a look at the number line. So our starting point is the first number, which is positive 2, and we are adding positive 3 to that. So that means we are increasing by positive 3 because addition is normally adding something to it. So let's increase our number by positive 3. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. And that means our answer is going to be positive 5. So that was our starting point. Let's have a look at number 2. The next question, positive 3 plus negative 2. So the key thing here is we are trying to add a negative number, which is a bit of a weird concept. So let's change the pen color so we can draw that better on our diagram. So we're starting off at positive 3. So I've done that in blue. And we are increasing it by negative 2. So normally for addition, we are increasing it by going to the right or up the number scale. But we are looking to increase it by a negative number, which actually means we are looking to decrease it. So in our case, we've added negative 2 by going minus 1 and minus 2. So we're going in the opposite direction of our normal addition. And that means that answer is 1. Let's have a look at question 3, the third example, negative 2 plus positive 4. So this is a similar one. We'll change pen colors so we can see it a bit better on our graph. We've got negative 2, so we're starting just up there. And we are increasing it by positive 4, so we're doing our usual increase. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And we finish up at 2. And our final question, we've got negative 3 and we are adding negative 2. So this is probably the hardest one we're going to look at. So let's change our pen color again so we can see what's going on. Let's use purple this time. We're starting at negative 3, so hopefully everyone can see that purple dot I've drawn. And we are increasing it by negative 2. So increase, we normally go this way. But we're actually going to be increasing it by a negative number, which means it's going to go backwards. 1, 2. So that's the plus negative 1, and that's the plus negative 2. And that means our final answer is negative 5. Hopefully everyone can see that purple on the black background. So that's addition. We're adding and subtracting. And there's a couple key points we need to get out of this. So when you're adding a positive, you are going to be increasing. Or that just becomes a positive. And if you're adding a negative number, that just becomes negative. So that's really important, and that's a skill that we're going to need to know eventually for fractions and decimals and our algebra as well. So adding a positive is the same as plussing, and adding a negative is the same as a negative. So what that does mean is we can actually reword all these questions. So positive 2 plus positive 3, that's just the same as saying 2 plus 3. And that makes sense because our answer is 5. And then our next one, we've got positive 3 plus negative 2. So we're adding a negative number, which means we're actually subtracting it. So that's 3 minus 2. And that makes sense because of our answer of 1. And we've got negative 2 plus positive 4. So plussing positive 4 is the same as plus 4. So we've got negative 2 plus 4, and that matches our answer of positive 2. And finally, we've got negative 3 plus negative 2. And we've been told if we're adding a negative, that's the same as subtraction. So we've got negative 3 minus negative 2, and that becomes a negative 5. And that matches our answer there. So that's a bit of an overview of addition. And the key thing we want to memorize down the bottom there, if we're adding a positive, that's plus. And if we're adding a negative, that's a minus. And we should always look to make our equations look a bit simpler, like we did there on the left-hand side. Okay, let's move on to subtraction. I'm going to pause the video and clear our work, and then we'll start again on addition. Okay, I'm back, and by addition, I did mean subtraction because we've just done addition. So subtraction, that is the opposite of addition, and that is when we look to decrease. So I'm going to put a white box down the bottom that relates to the notes that we are going to be wanting to take. So first question, let's say we've got 2 minus positive 1. And then our second question, oh sorry, that's positive 2. We've got positive 3 minus negative 2. And we're only going to do 3 for this one. We've got minus 4 minus negative 2. So we've got 3 questions. Let's see how they go. Let's change the pen color so we can see the diagram a bit better. For the first one, positive 2 minus positive 1. So that first number, that always relates to our start point, and we are starting at positive 2. And we are subtracting 1. So when we subtract, we normally make our numbers smaller. So when we are subtracting positive 1, we are just going back 1 space, which means our answer will be 1. And another way we could write that is 2 minus 1. So that means down the bottom, if we are subtracting a positive, that is the same as subtraction. Let's have a look at question 2. So we're starting at positive 3, and we are subtracting negative 2. And this is where subtraction becomes interesting. So typically subtraction makes it smaller, and it goes to the left or to the smaller numbers on the number scale. But like addition, when you're subtracting a negative, we go the opposite direction to which we normally go. So this time around, we're going to go negative 2. So we're going in the other direction by 2, which would be 1, 2. So that would be minus 1, and that there would be minus 2. So that means we finish up on 5. And that one's interesting because it shows us something else. When we are adding a negative number, those two lines, they actually form together to make a plus sign. So that means that 3 minus negative 2 becomes 3 plus 2. And that's something for us really important to note. So when we are subtracting a negative value, that becomes addition. And our last one, we've got negative 4. So negative 4 is our starting point. So let's draw a dot there. So we've got that. And we are subtracting negative 2. So straight away, we're subtracting a negative 2. We just looked at that in the first question. So that becomes a positive number. So that becomes negative 4 plus 2. And plussing moves it higher. So there's 1 and there's 2. And that means that there would be negative 2. So a whole bunch of new skills that we're learning today. Hopefully a lot of this is revision. The key thing I'm wanting to emphasize are our notes that we've written down the bottom of the page, and they help us remember or take some shortcuts with our maths. So if we're subtracting a positive number, we can just change that to a minus sign. If we're subtracting a negative number, that's positive. If we're adding a positive number, we can just add. And if we're adding a negative number, that's just a minus. All right, if you're interested in some questions or work in relation to these, have a look at the link in the description below, and let's get on with some practice.